So the Crimson Tide continue their impressive month of July on the recruiting trail, as yesterday they got a big-time win for four-star interior offensive lineman William Sanders out the state of Alabama, something that today we need to talk about. But that's not all, as the Crimson Tide continue to make up ground for a five-star defensive lineman, something we need to discuss, something you do not want to miss. But before we jump into all of it, y'all know the drill. I have got to hear from you. Hop down to the comments, give me a Y for yes or an N for no. Are you excited that William Sanders commits to the Crimson Tide? And then let me know what you're thinking. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe. Hit that bell notification. I do constant college football content. You don't want to miss any of it. And if you enjoyed the content, be sure to like and comment down below, as those interactions seem small. They are massive to content creators such as myself, and both getting picked up and maintained by the YouTube algorithm. But having said all that, let's jump right into this. And we have made several videos talking about the Alabama offensive line here recently, and every time I do so, I'm sure to highlight Coach Wolford. Because even though Coach Wolford hasn't been with the Crimson Tide for very long, in my opinion, he is an absolute asset to this team. Not only in terms of what he does in terms of coaching, where the Alabama offensive line got better last year, something I think we're going to continue seeing going into this year, where I think it's going to be a continued improving unit, and I'm very excited to see how they end up. But also on the recruiting trail, where Coach Wolford has put in a lot of work and gotten several huge wins for the Crimson Tide. And it's not just relegated to the class of 2023. Already in the class of 2024, we have had several conversations about Coach Wolford's contribution on the trail, and once again, here we sit, talking about a four-star offensive lineman that chose the Crimson Tide over the likes of Mississippi State and LSU, as William Sanders stands 6'2", 290 pounds per 24/7 Sports Composite, and is ranked just outside the top 300 prospects, but a four-star interior offensive lineman nonetheless. A big win for the Crimson Tide, as you can never argue with offensive line pieces, especially if someone like Coach Wolford looks at that guy and says, yeah, that's someone who I want to coach. Because Coach Wolford has absolutely earned the benefit of the doubt right now. If we look everywhere he's been, there's been a statistical improvement on the offensive line, something that once again we saw last year with the Crimson Tide. And so that's an individual where if he says, that's a guy I want, you've got to give him that ability, and he is going out and winning those battles. So what does this mean for the Crimson Tide's recruiting class as a whole? Well, this puts them back in the top 5, and once again, they have the fewest commits of any team within the top 5. And that's something that I'm really interested in watching, is where Alabama goes from here. Because not only are they sitting in a fantastic range, first off, if you're a top 20 recruiting class right now, you're feeling really good about where you sit, because there's so much time and opportunity in front of you. But if you are Alabama and you're a top 5 recruiting class with so much room left to go in your class, you have got to be over the moon with where you currently sit, because there's nothing but time, opportunity, and room in your class, and you already sit as among the nation's most elite classes. So this is something I'm very excited to watch. Alabama continues to recruit at an elite level year in, year out, and this year is a symbol that it's not going anywhere anytime soon. But as we talked about in the intro, we're not only talking about William Sanders today, even though that's a fantastic win, even though it puts Alabama back in the top 5, and even though I love his game, there's another conversation on the recruiting trail we have got to have. A conversation where we get to stay in the trenches, we just have to flip the side of the field. As now we need to turn our attention to the defensive line and a 5-star defensive lineman that Alabama is reportedly making moves on. And of course, today we're talking about Edric Houston, the 5-star defensive lineman that plays his high school football for Buford, Georgia, somewhere where Alabama fans have become accustomed to the Crimson Tide getting big recruiting wins. And Edric Houston could be another. In fact, I have got to hear from all of you. Hop down to the comments. Y for yes, N for no. Do you believe Edric Houston is going to be the next Buford player to go to Alabama? Can't wait to hear what you're saying there. But at the end of the day, let's really break this down. Because right now, as we currently sit here, Ohio State is in a fantastic position for the very talented 5-star defensive lineman. And one thing we've got to acknowledge is that whenever you're talking about defensive line recruiting, if Ohio State is in the battle, you have got to give credence to Larry Johnson, a phenomenal defensive line coach, a phenomenal defensive line recruiter, and we could go through the laundry list of 5-star, 4-star guys he's been able to get and successfully develop there. It's very impressive. So you do need to give credence to Coach Johnson, as he has been an absolute asset to the Buckeyes for quite some time. But we can also look at the Crimson Tide and say, hey, they have got elite recruiters as well. Freddie Roach is on staff. Travaris Robinson is listed as a recruiter for Houston per the 24/7 Sports Composite. So that's something we've got to watch, because those two guys right there are phenomenal recruiters. And on top of that, we already know the relationship the Crimson Tide has to that high school where they've been very successful. Plus, Alabama offers the closer proximity, and the cherry on top is that you don't get to sit and look at Edric Houston and say, hey, you have to take a chance on coming to Alabama. Yeah, Larry Johnson is a phenomenal defensive line coach, but now you get to take a chance on Alabama. That's not the situation at all. Alabama is one of the few schools that can go to a defensive lineman being recruited by Ohio State and say, everything they offer, we offer. We send guys to the NFL like it's going out of style, especially along that defensive line, and we have proved time and time again, you don't need to start here all 3 years to go in the first round of the NFL draft at Alabama along that defensive line. They have proved time and time again they're going to send you to the first 3 rounds of that NFL draft, even off of 1-2 years of production. That's what separates Alabama. That's why, even though Ohio State, anytime they're after defensive linemen, you've got to sit up in your chair. It's a serious battle. When Alabama comes to the table, they have every pitch that Ohio State has, plus they have the proximity, plus they have the draft results, which Ohio State does as well. But what Alabama has been doing the last 5 years has been absolutely nutty. This is a battle we've got to watch, because whenever Alabama comes to the table, it's an entirely different recruiting battle, something we talk about with Larry Johnson all the time, but the same can be said for teams like Alabama, for teams like Georgia, where when they come and sit down at that table, when they have their pitch be heard, you're not playing the same game you once were. You're playing an entirely different game now, and now the big boys are out, and they're throwing down for these recruits. I can't wait to see what happens, but what we do need to acknowledge is that the Crimson Tide are one of the few teams out there that they can come in the 11th hour of a recruiting battle, sit down at the table, and completely change the trajectory of it. And the thing is, nobody in college football would be surprised in the least. That's the power of the Alabama Crimson Tide, not only in terms of their coaches, not only in terms of their recruiters, but the brand at this point, and it's warranted. So I can't wait to see how this ends up. I can't wait to hear from all of you. Either way, William Sanders is a huge win for the Crimson Tide. Awesome to hear how they're getting back in this Edric Houston battle. That's going to be something we keep up with. We will be talking about it very soon. Live streams pick back up this week. Can't wait to see you all there, but until then, that's it. See ya.